checking in at the current state of what's going on in comics with Diamond, with Marvel, with DC, who's basically announced a pause, spoiler, all of them, and when that pause might be lifted. Let's go into what we know. Hey everybody, this is Perch. As we continue to work through the COVID-19 shutdown of everything for all intents and purposes, a lot of people are taking a very close look at what this means for comics. Now, unfortunately, comics has a number of kind of key points that are going to be disrupted by everything that is happening. For example, comic books need to be printed somewhere. Printing is an operation, and the whole people who would man the printers, pack the books, all that process is likely disrupted. Unfortunately, printing comics or printing material is not considered an essential service. So if it happens to exist in a state that's had a shutdown or a lockdown or a government order, then they can't operate. So that's going to shut down the flow of new books being produced. Then we get to the distributor, which is Diamond, and Diamond has a number of problems we've been talking about. Certainly, the ability to then ship those out, the product that comes into their warehouse, and being able to distribute those out to the different retailers. They're operating on a skeleton crew now. Their business is largely closed. They've been announcing how the management's taken a 50% pay cut. They've already laid off a large number of people. They don't have incoming product, so they can't ship product out. And several of their distribution centers are also affected by this stay-at-home shutdown order. On top of that, of course, if you're Diamond, you live and breathe by product coming in, product going out. Ergo, that's your cash flow. So because that has been disrupted, now they are having trouble paying, and they have gone into having to pay just a small percentage of their bills as they've gone to the publishers or their suppliers, not just comic companies. As you might remember, Diamond actually traffics a number of different goods and services, not just comics. But this step was met with a lot of fear and concern whenever somebody starts messing around with payment, particularly a payment for something that may have already been sold or produced. That's going to be a big deal. In this case, just so we understand what's happened, this is comic shops who can't necessarily pay their bills. They're late in payments to Diamond. Diamond is in turning around. We don't know, by the way, how many of those. Maybe all the comic shops have paid their bills. That's hard to believe, but we believe that at least some are late, and we do believe that thus the incoming money to Diamond is forcing them to not turn around and send the money out. But basically, it's a shutdown of product. What is true, and this is speculation on my part, but some comic shops obviously did pay bills. I don't think it's as dire as kind of this immediate, we can't make payroll or we can't make pay. So it indicates that Diamond is both conserving capital. They're looking at that they're going to have to burn money, burn cash for a while now. And how long, nobody knows. There's been a lot of different reports of things are going to get back to business in May, maybe June. There's other reports that say that the whole social distancing guidelines are going to need to be extended through April. And if those are the guidelines are going out, several of the states, particularly ones that Diamond are in, have troubles. They're not going to be able to just physically operate and do their business. Diamond has made some provisions that when possible, they will ship to homes of shops if the shop is shut down. So they're trying to at least keep some outflow of product going so that things don't drive to zero. If you're a distributor or a printer, or you're a company that prints, makes goods, and then delivers them, then you one thing that you fear as a business is shutting down to a full stop. If you shut down to a full stop, it's usually very costly to bring things back up again. There's an operational tax on going to zero and then starting up. And I think Diamond's trying to avoid that any way they can, but it's going to be very hard to. We've talked a lot about the comic shops and just being unable to open. If they're not getting product in the door, then they don't have product to sell, but then they have to switch to mail order or anything else. In the weirdest possible way, comic shops that have back issue supply and other things are probably the ones that have the most straightforward next 30 days in front of them. They know what they can sell. They know more or less what they have. and they are coming up with mechanisms to get those things out to customers, either through curbside or mail order or whatever it happens to be. They don't have incoming new comics, but at least they know what they have to work with. In the weirdest way, comic shops probably have a decent understanding of what's going on. But then you get to the publishers, and the publishers are in much more of a confused place. Marvel announced that they're not releasing any print digital comics tomorrow, April 8th. DC is joining this. Basically, everybody has come to this. And part of this, at least on the print side of the world, it's pragmatic. People are saying this like, "Oh my God, can you believe Marvel shut down their print comics?" It's like, but nobody could print them. Like, who is actually going to go do this? It's not like Marvel's sitting in a boardroom somewhere going, we should just decide not to ship comics this week. It's like there's no way to print them, to ship them. That chain that I've just spent the last several minutes describing is broken. So there is no option for them. So then it goes to digital. Well, Marvel does have comics ready to go. You would expect probably for the next month or so, they have a large number of their line either complete or ready, and they could start shipping them digitally. But the problem there is, as we've talked about before, is that starts to create a real gap because eventually you have to catch up, quote unquote, with those print comics. Now, you may have read some stories about how a bunch of the local comic shops are protesting the big publishers shipping out on digital. They're protesting this for their own business self-interest, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're basically saying, hey, if you create this gap and you basically retrain this whole audience because you have to. I mean, there becomes a moment in time where it's like there are no other options. If you start doing that, then people just stop buying the digital, the physical copy. They'll just go to digital, and then our business is gone. So there's comic shops fighting for their holding things, but it's not just a comic shop problem. I mean, if you're Marvel owned by Disney and you're DC, and you would be able to make a profit and continue your business more or less as normal by just stopping doing print, I guarantee you they would not be sitting there going, well, let's hear what the local comic shop has to say. They would be like, well, that's a shame, but we're moving forward. The problem they have is that, one, digital just does not bring anywhere close to an amount of money needed to survive as a company. And I'm sure they have looked at it. There's no indication right now that if they went digital in a world where no print can be sold, all those print customers would go over to digital. That's not going to happen. So they know it's a losing market, and they know that their current outflow of cash for their editorial, their creative teams, the production of a comic book, they know that does not match even just break even on going digital only right now, with no clear signs that changes. So they are basically looking at, they can't let this gap exist, because if they release digital today and then say 2 months from now the world opens back up, or God help us, August, September the world opens back up again, nobody's going to say, well, you know what, or it's not nobody, but a very small audience is going to go in and try and pick up those physical copies. So their best bet right now is just increase demand. That's what they're doing. And just ride it out. Hope that in 6 weeks or so, physical print copies can go out again, and this was an unfortunate disruption, and the world gets going. But already, in case you also didn't see this, Marvel has announced that they're going to basically trim about a third of their line. And while nothing was said directly, they talked about how some of their bigger titles would double ship to kind of catch up again, because they have this stuff in the bank. But to the creators, they're telling a lot of the people at DC and at Marvel and are everywhere, stop creating new work, because they can't have this influx of new material if they don't currently know how they're going to sell it. So that's the position we're in right now, and that's the state of the world. We're in a holding pattern. Right now, very little is going to happen for at least the next 3 weeks. A number, hopefully, and I would expect, in the background, you will see DC and Marvel looking at other distribution options. You will also see some level of more serious, digital strategy of how that will actually, be built for the future. But any digital strategy they're doing right now is something they're thinking about for 2021 at earliest. It's not, a true digital strategy is not going to come magically up in the next 4 weeks. So there may be some efforts. I would expect that there's they start to parse off some of the titles and say, okay, we're going to let these go out in digital. And maybe this is a case where Marvel takes that third of comics that they think were probably their lowest sellers anyway, and starts putting those out on digital, and with never an intention to release them physically to shops, at least not in floppy form, maybe in graphic novel form. Probably that's going to happen. But right now, unfortunately, no new comic day will probably continue at least through the month of April and beyond. The question will be how quickly can both things open up and these comic publishers come up with a different plan for how things get distributed. But that's the current state of the world. Not a pleasant one, but where we're at right now. Do you have any questions about where things are going? There's a lot of news and information floating around everywhere. People are very much reporting on things as it goes. I upload this video an hour later, some new statement will come out and we'll react to that. But if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll try and answer them as best I can. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch. Like, subscribe as always, and thanks for listening.